My husband demanded a prenup to protect his $5 million. He had no idea I was worth $300 million. The waiter had just poured champagne when my fiancé slid a thick white envelope across the table and smiled nervously. I need you to sign this before the wedding. The violin music continued softly in the background while people laughed around us inside the upscale Manhattan restaurant. Outside the giant windows, snow drifted slowly across the city lights. I looked down at the envelope. Prenuptial agreement. For a moment, I honestly thought he was joking. Then I looked up at Daniel's face and realized he wasn't. I know this feels awkward, he said quickly, adjusting the sleeve of his expensive navy suit, but after everything I've built, I have to protect myself. Everything he'd built. $5 million. 3 luxury gyms in Chicago. A growing fitness brand. A penthouse condo. A Porsche he talked about more lovingly than most people talk about family. Daniel leaned back confidently, clearly expecting me to be emotional. Instead, I stayed calm. Because the man sitting across from me had absolutely no idea who I really was. He thought I was a freelance graphic designer who lived in a modest apartment in Brooklyn and preferred simple clothes over luxury brands. He had no idea I owned one of the largest private healthcare investment groups in North America. No idea my personal net worth exceeded $300 million. No idea I had spent the last 8 months intentionally hiding my wealth to find someone who loved me, not my money. And no idea the prenup he nervously pushed toward me was about to reveal far more about him than it did about finances. Say something, Daniel said carefully. I lifted my eyes toward him. Do you think I'm after your money? His expression changed immediately. No, babe, it's not like that. Then came the corporate language. This is just smart planning. Business protection. My lawyer recommended it. I watched him speak while something heavy settled quietly inside my chest. Not because of the prenup, but because of the fear hidden underneath it. Daniel wasn't protecting himself from greed. He was protecting himself from vulnerability. There's a difference. I picked up the document and flipped through the pages slowly. The terms were harsh. In the event of divorce, I would receive nothing beyond personal belongings. Any shared properties would remain entirely his. Even gifts above a certain value could legally revert back to him. It read less like a partnership and more like a warning. Daniel laughed awkwardly. You know how ugly divorces get these days. I smiled faintly. I do. And I truly did. My father's billion-dollar estate had nearly destroyed our family after his death. Relatives fought over money like strangers fighting over scraps. Lawsuits lasted years. Trust disappeared overnight. That experience taught me something important very early in life. Money never changes people, it reveals them. Daniel reached across the table and touched my hand gently. This doesn't change how much I love you. I stared at our hands together. 8 months earlier, I would have believed him without hesitation. I met Daniel during one of the worst weeks of my life. Not financially, emotionally. My mother had just passed away after a long battle with cancer. Despite all my resources, all the private doctors, all the experimental treatments money could buy, none of it saved her. After the funeral, I disappeared from my usual world. No assistants, no private drivers, no charity galas. I rented a small apartment in Brooklyn under my middle name and tried living like a normal person for the first time in years. One rainy afternoon, I stopped into a quiet coffee shop near Central Park. I sat alone by the window sketching aimlessly in a notebook while trying not to cry in public. That's when Daniel approached me. You draw when you're sad too. I looked up, startled. He stood there holding 2 coffees and an apologetic smile. I know that sounded strange, he laughed. I just noticed you've been staring at the same page for 20 minutes. Normally, I hated strangers interrupting me. But something about him felt warm. Easy. He wore simple workout clothes and looked nothing like the polished executives I spent most of my life around. Rough week? He asked gently. I nodded once. Instead of asking invasive questions, he simply slid 1 coffee toward me and sat quietly across from me. No performance. No flirting. Just kindness. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Daniel became my safe place after that. We started meeting for morning walks through the city. He told me stories about building his business from nothing after his father abandoned their family. I told him edited versions of my life. carefully leaving out the fortune, the companies, the properties, the boardrooms. For the first time ever, someone liked me without knowing what I owned. Or at least I thought he did. Daniel admired simplicity, or at least that's what he claimed. He used to kiss my forehead and say things like, "I love that you're not obsessed with money. You're different from wealthy women. You actually appreciate real life." At the time, those comments sounded sweet. Now I realize they were small clues. He loved the version of me that made him feel powerful. The version beneath him financially. The version that needed him. Still, I ignored the signs because loving someone feels safer than questioning them. 6 months later, he proposed during a weekend trip to Vermont. Snow covered the mountains while a fireplace crackled softly behind us inside a small cabin. "I don't care if we ever become rich," he whispered while sliding the ring onto my finger. "As long as we stay like this." I almost told him everything right then. Almost. But fear stopped me. Not fear of losing him. Fear that once he knew the truth, I'd never know if his love was real. Back in the restaurant, Daniel kept watching my face nervously. "You're quiet." I'm thinking. His shoulders tightened. "Look, if this is about trust." "It is about trust," I interrupted softly. The silence between us stretched longer this time. Finally he sighed. "You have to understand something, Ava. People change around money." I almost laughed at the irony. If only he knew. Then he added the sentence that changed everything. "I've worked too hard to let someone take advantage of me." Someone. Not partner. Not wife. Someone. A potential threat. I closed the folder carefully. "Okay," I said calmly. "I'll sign it." Relief flooded his face instantly. "You will?" "Yes." He grinned widely and squeezed my hand. "Thank you for understanding." But while he celebrated internally, I made a quiet decision of my own. If he wanted complete honesty in marriage, he was finally going to get it. 2 weeks later, Daniel invited me to dinner with his closest friends to celebrate the upcoming wedding. The entire evening revolved around success, business growth, investments, luxury watches, vacation homes. One of his friends raised a glass jokingly. To Daniel, the only guy smart enough to get a prenup before marriage. The table laughed approvingly. Another friend smirked at me. "No offense, Ava, nowadays you can't be too careful." Daniel chuckled beside me instead of defending me. That hurt more than the joke itself. Then his business partner leaned forward curiously. "So what exactly do you do again?" "Graphic design," I answered politely. He nodded slowly in the way wealthy people sometimes do when they quietly rank your value in their heads. Daniel wrapped an arm around my shoulder. "She's not really into the corporate world." Not really into the corporate world. Meanwhile, my company's employed over 4,000 people across North America. I smiled politely through dinner, but something inside me was finally waking up. Not anger, clarity. 3 days before the wedding, Daniel invited me to tour a new luxury penthouse he planned to buy after our honeymoon. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan. Marble counters gleamed beneath gold lighting. "It's $12 million, he said proudly. "But worth every penny." He walked through the massive living room imagining our future aloud. My office would go there. We'd host investor parties here. Then he smiled. "You'd love the closet space." I wandered quietly toward the windows. The city stretched endlessly beneath us. Beautiful, cold, temporary. "Daniel," I asked softly, "would you still marry me if I lost everything?" He laughed immediately. "Babe, you don't have anything to lose." The words hit harder than he intended. Because for the first time, I realized he never truly saw me. Not my mind, not my strength, not my sacrifices, just the small harmless version of me he created in his head. And suddenly I no longer wanted to fit inside it. The morning of the wedding arrived bright and cold. Guests filled the historic hotel ballroom overlooking Central Park. White roses covered every table while a string quartet played softly near the windows. Daniel looked handsome standing at the altar. Confident, certain. His lawyer had already finalized the prenup the night before. He thought everything was settled. But before the ceremony began, I requested 5 private minutes with him. Inside a small waiting room behind the ballroom, Daniel loosened his tie nervously. "You're scaring me," he laughed. I handed him another folder. "What's this?" "Just something you should read before we get married." Still smiling casually, He opened it. The smile disappeared within seconds. Then came confusion. Then disbelief. Financial statements, corporate ownership records, property portfolios, investment trusts, private equity reports, all under my legal name. All authentic. Daniel stared at the numbers repeatedly as if his brain refused to process them. $318 million. Finally he whispered, This isn't possible. It is. You're wealthy. I'm the majority owner of Bennett Healthcare Capital. His face went completely pale. The same company his investors constantly talked about. The same company recently featured on Forbes. The same company worth billions. He slowly sat down in the nearest chair. You lied to me. I nodded once. Yes. The room became painfully quiet. Then I added softly, but not for the reason you think. He looked up at me, stunned. I spent my entire life wondering whether people loved me or my money. So when we met, I wanted one relationship untouched by wealth. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. Oh my God, you said you loved simplicity, I continued carefully. You said money didn't matter. It doesn't. Then why did you need protection from someone you believed had far less than you? That question shattered him, because suddenly the prenup looked very different. Not smart, not practical, just fearful, and maybe a little arrogant. I never wanted to hurt you, he whispered. I know. And strangely, I believed him. Daniel wasn't evil, just insecure. Like many people who spend their lives chasing status, he confused financial success with personal worth. Then he looked at me with genuine pain in his eyes. So what happens now? I reached into my purse and removed the prenup. Slowly, calmly, I tore it in half. Daniel stared speechless. I'm not marrying a contract, I said quietly. I'm marrying a human being. Emotion filled his eyes instantly. But there's one thing I need from you. Anything. I need honesty. Real honesty. No ego. No pretending money makes either of us more important than other people. For the first time since I'd known him, Daniel looked completely stripped of pride. Just human. Then something unexpected happened. He started crying. Not dramatic tears. Quiet ones. My father left when we were broke, he admitted shakily. My mom lost everything trying to survive. I swore I'd never feel powerless again. Suddenly so much of his behavior made sense. The obsession with wealth, the fear, the need to control. I sat beside him gently. And instead of punishing him for his weakness, I held his hand. Because pain handled without compassion only creates more pain. After several minutes, Daniel laughed weakly through tears. So technically, you needed a prenup from me. I smiled softly. Technically. He shook his head in disbelief. I spent months trying to impress a woman who could probably buy my entire company. I didn't want your company. What did you want? I looked toward the ballroom where our guests waited beyond the doors. You.